Novia was completely alone when she underwent her first MECT treatment. Even her deeply devoted fiancé Dylan was absent. After the doctor administered the muscle relaxant, she drifted into drowsiness and hazily recalled that evening. She had returned home with a cake purchased after 3 hours of queuing, hoping to surprise Dylan, only to witness him kissing her younger sister Rita, their lips and tongues intertwined as they clung to each other, unwilling to part. Novia dropped the cake in her hand, watching it shatter beyond recognition before slapping Dylan across the face, only to be shoved down the stairs by Rita. As she tumbled down the steps, Novia felt an odd sense of inevitability. Novia those around her would ultimately be taken away by Rita. Rita was warm and outgoing, like a little sun. In contrast, the taciturn Novia lived up to her name, like a shadow with no presence. From the very first second Dylan laid eyes on Rita, she had an ominous premonition. Back then she comforted herself, thinking their 10-year relationship with Dylan would never come to this, yet reality slapped Novia hard across the face. Dylan took her to the hospital and kept vigil by her bedside, fetching a hot water bottle from nurses to warm her 4 chilled hands. That kiss was just an accident, Dylan said. I only saw her as you, a younger, more vibrant version of you. Novia, you're too strong-willed, too distant. I always feel like I'm not needed by you. There won't be a next time. As for Rita, she's still your sister after all, and so young. Don't hold it against her, okay? Novia lowered her eyes and suddenly smiled. You're telling me all this because you're afraid I'll drive Rita away, right? Dylan choked up and tightened his grip on Novia's hand. Novia, I know you're still angry right now, but it's okay. I'll stay with you until you calm down. Novia withdrew her hand and turned her back to Dylan. Behind her came Dylan's sigh. As if she were a petulant child, the phone rang, and she distinctly heard Rita's voice on the line. Dylan, I'm so scared being home alone. Could you come back and keep me company? I didn't mean to push my sister on purpose. It's just that she hit you and it broke my heart. Later when I calmed down and thought about it, I really didn't use much force at all. I don't understand why my sister fell like that. Dylan softly comforted her before saying to Novia, there's an emergency at the company. I'll be right back. He left the hospital in haste. Until Novia was discharged, Dylan never returned to the hospital even once. Novia's leg injury hadn't fully healed. She left the hospital simply to avoid visits from others. These days, visitors came in waves, yet their words were all monotonously the same. Forgive her, Rita. Don't know Rita what she told them. Novia's friends and colleagues looked at her with deep reproach in their eyes. Rita is just a child. No matter how bad her mother is, you can't take your anger out on a little kid. You're her only sister, her only family in this world. If even you hold prejudices against her, then she truly will be left with no one to turn to. Novia felt her heart grow cold hearing her best friend Sarah speak so righteously. Resentment, she had it, yet she had never treated Rita unfairly, not even half a bit. When Rita wanted to study abroad, she even scraped together the school selection fees to send her overseas right after high school. Everyone tacitly forgot about their shared father Devin, who had eloped with Rita's mother when Novia was less than 3 years old, taking all their wealth with him. All that remained for Novia and her mother were suffocating debts. Mrs. Jonas transferred her resentment toward her husband onto Novia. Working tirelessly to support her while constantly berating her, she studied hard, got into a prestigious university, joined a top company, and met Dylan. Just as everything seemed to be falling into place, Jonas' family brought Rita to her doorstep. Devin and his wife died in a car accident, leaving this daughter alone with no one to rely on. She's 13 this year. Biologically you're her sister, so raising her until adulthood is your responsibility. Devin never called once or sent a single penny all these years as her father. Now she was legally obligated to raise the child born from the very person who had caused them so much pain. Novia had no choice but to bring Rita home. At just 20 years old herself, she had to care for her 13-year-old sister like a mother. When work became overwhelming, she could only bring Rita to the office. Devin and his wife had only this one daughter, so naturally they doted on her endlessly, raising her to be sunny and generous. Novia's friends and colleagues gradually grew fond of this girl, moving from initial rejection to genuine liking. Your sister is much more likable than you. She had heard this remark from those around her more than once. Now even her lover of 10 years thinks so. Novia, wake up. In her daze, someone was gently calling her name. Novia's thoughts were interrupted as she opened her eyes. The treatment had ended. She stood up as the nurse removed the device from her head. Your memory may decline during this period. It's normal. Just maintain regular routines, the nurse reminded her. Remember your next appointment. Novia nodded and recorded everything the nurse said in her notebook. As the number of MECT treatments increased, she gradually forgot many things, so she wrote down all the tasks she needed to complete in a notebook. She tried to recall, but found that past events seemed shrouded in fog. While she remained an observer, calm and rational, at the top of her notes, she saw 2 items written in bold red letters. First, transfer Rita Hess household registration. Second, break up with Dylan. She vaguely remembered that she had already completed the household registration transfer procedures before starting treatment. Novia opened her phone, and her last conversation with Rita remained frozen from before she discovered her kissing Dylan. Rita wanted a pair of limited edition shoes and called her sister to ask. Novia was struggling financially at 18, not daring to buy clothes that cost over 100 yuan. She knew girls loved beauty and understood how strong a teenager's pride could be at this stage. She transferred the money without saying a word. Rita silently accepted the money without uttering a word in response. Novia let out a sigh, exited her chat window, and clicked on Dylan Hess. Their conversation had also stopped on the second day after she was hospitalized. He had said, "I'm really worried about you." Nearly half a month had passed Novia since her hospital discharge, through her MECT appointment, post-examination evaluations, and completion of the first treatment cycle. She wasn't quite sure Dylan how far his worries had progressed. Only when she returned home and opened the door did she see Dylan and her friends celebrating Rita's 21st birthday. Then it suddenly dawned on her. Novia carried the medicine prescribed by the doctor and struggled slightly to open the door with her bag, only to be greeted by a chorus of well wishes. "Happy birthday, Rita." As she stepped into the living room, she saw everyone gathered around Rita, singing the birthday song. Rita, her eyes brimming with tears and face lit with surprise, hugged Dylan tightly. A friend casually turned their head and saw Novia, giving a light cough. The entire room fell silent when they realized Novia had returned. After a moment, Dylan asked somewhat awkwardly, "Novia, you're discharged from the hospital already. Why didn't you tell me? I could have picked you up." Novia looked at the man who had been with her for 10 years. Yet now he felt somewhat unfamiliar. When she first saw him kissing Rita, she was heartbroken, betrayed by the 2 people she was closest to and had given the most to. The pain was so intense she could barely stand. Just as she opened her mouth to question and curse, Novia recalled how her mother used to scream hysterically at her when drunk. She didn't want to follow in her mother's footsteps, so she could only force herself to remain composed. But now when she looked at Dylan, she only felt her heart gripped for a moment, just a brief stab of pain. Avoiding Dylan's attempt to take her bag, she said indifferently, "The hospital isn't peaceful either. Might as well go home." Her words left the friends present feeling somewhat awkward. Sarah stepped forward and mediated. "Novia, you came at the perfect time. Today is Rita Hess' birthday. Dylan specifically asked us not to let Rita know anything. We all pulled money to buy a gift. You're her sister, so it's perfect for you to give it to her." With that said, Novia found a delicate little box pressed into her hand. Novia stood frozen for a moment before finally accepting it and passing it to Rita. Rita had lived with her since she was 13 and had now grown into a young woman. Novia had been her sister for many years, and giving this gift was her way of honoring their bond. The moment the gift was handed over, Rita reached out to take it, but it still fell to the ground. The gift box burst open, revealing a beautiful glass bracelet, now shattered into several pieces. Rita saw this and nearly burst into tears. "Sister, do you still refuse to forgive me? That was just an accident. I really didn't mean it. I've been so worried about you during your hospital stay, afraid you wouldn't forgive me." When the people around saw Rita crying, they quickly comforted her, casting reproachful glances at Novia. "Novia, I don't mean to criticize, but as the older sister, you shouldn't be holding a grudge against your younger sister. Today is Rita's birthday. Can't you just let her enjoy this important day?" Novia looked at the person accusing her, her lips parting and closing wordlessly. Standing right in the center, gazing at her with disappointment, was the fiancé she had loved for 10 years. Novia heard a sudden roaring in her ears. His vision began to blur, and he could barely stand steady. She thought, no matter what, at least get these people to leave here first. At this moment, Dylan spoke up. "All right, don't blame Novia anymore. She just got out of the hospital." He walked over to Novia, gently touched her forehead with concern, and said softly, "Don't take it to heart with Rita. She's just a child." Dylan picked up the small box from the ground and handed it back to Novia. "She just accidentally dropped it earlier. Give it to her again, and everything will be fine. It just so happens today is Rita's birthday. Sisters sitting down for a meal together. There's no conflict that can't be resolved. You'll need to get along well in the days to come." Dylan's voice was gentle, but the hand resting on Novia's shoulder was applying subtle pressure. Novia took a deep breath, let out a sigh, and moved away from Dylan's hand. She said softly, "No need, she and I most likely won't be living together anymore." As everyone gasped collectively, she continued, "Actually, I came back today intending to move out." Woo-woo. The quiet scene was suddenly broken by Rita Hess crying. Tears kept streaming from her reddened eyes, her nose flushed crimson. She looked utterly pitiful. "Sis, Are you trying to drive me away? Rita covered her mouth, her eyes filled with disbelief, looking helplessly at Dylan. Dylan, what should I do? You promised me you'd help explain things to my sister, but she still refuses to believe me. Dylan soothingly patted Rita's head, his jaw tightening as he stared fixedly at Novia. His furrowed brows and tightly pressed lips betrayed his impatience in every way. Novia suddenly felt utterly powerless, before she could even begin to explain. Her friend's accusations silenced her. Novia, this is going too far. You kicked Rita out. Where is she supposed to live now? What if something happens to that little girl out there alone? How could you be so heartless? Sarah looked distressed as she pleaded for Rita. Let it go, Novia. Look how heartbroken Rita is crying. Besides, she's still so young. What will she do if you throw her out? Novia looked at her longtime friend. Remembering how Sarah had lost all her savings to telecom fraud, it was she who gave all her saved money to Sarah, providing her with a place to stay. Back then, Sarah was filled with gratitude, hugging Novia and calling her her best friend. Now, she stands opposite Novia, accusing her for a sister who kissed her fiancé. Novia stared fixedly at this dear friend from her youth, her heart utterly desolate. Sarah, no matter how close we are, this is still my family matter. Besides, I'm moving out soon. This house. Before she could finish, Dylan interrupted. Enough, Novia. Sarah just wanted to speak up fairly for Rita. Rita is your sister, and she has a share in this house too. While gently comforting Rita, he glared angrily at Novia. In the end, you're still holding a grudge about what happened between me and Rita, refusing to believe no matter how much I explain. But she's still young after all. If anything's bothering her, she can come to me. There's no need to take it out on him. Novia was cut off mid-sentence, her explanation stuck in her throat. She pressed her lips together, suddenly losing all desire to speak. Seeing her silence, Dylan deepened the furrow between his brows. Rita timidly approached Novia, took her hand, and pleaded, Sister, please don't be angry with me anymore. I promise I won't say a single word to Dylan from now on. You're the only family I have left. If you abandon me, I truly have nowhere else to go. Novia remained silent, but a sharp pain shot through her hand. She instinctively flung her hand. Rita was thrown aside and fell to the ground. Novia reached out to comfort her but was shoved away by Dylan. Don't you touch her. It was the first time she'd seen Dylan so distraught, his worried gaze, trembling hands, and caring words pierced Novia's heart one by one. Dylan, my foot hurts. I think I twisted it. Rita frowned. Dylan scooped her up in his arms, pausing to give Novia one last lingering look before leaving. I'll take her away. You should take this time to calm down and think things through, Dylan said, his Adam's apple bobbing as he added, Novia, you've truly disappointed me. Novia's hand twitched almost imperceptibly as she sniffled quietly, trying to ease the ache in her heart. The surrounding crowd watched the scene silently, but their gazes toward Novia were filled with reproach. Sarah suggested, how about we accompany Rita to the hospital? We can celebrate the birthday somewhere else. Exactly. Having such bad luck during a celebration is really unfortunate. Shouldn't we change our fortunes? Novia stood under their gazes, listening to their pointed remarks, when a surge of indignation suddenly welled up in her heart. Are you done? If you're finished, you can leave now. After all, I'm still the owner of this house. TCH. As if anyone wants to stay at your place. If it weren't for Rita, even dogs wouldn't come here, a guy who'd been pursuing Rita said disdainfully. You just can't stand Rita being more popular than you, an old woman still engaging in petty female rivalry. How disgusting. Novia saw Dylan's figure pause slightly, but he didn't turn back, silently carrying Rita away. The group passed through Novia, the door slamming shut behind them with loud bangs. It swung back and forth, with creaking sounds, accompanied by Rita's gradually fading cheers. Yay! Thank you, Dylan. You guys are the best. Finally, everything returned to silence. Only Novia remained standing in the empty living room, quietly gazing at the exquisite cream cake and banner on the table. The bold letters read, Happy birthday, Rita. She inexplicably reached out her finger, scooped up some cream. It was sweet, so sweet it turned bitter in her heart. Novia suddenly remembered her childhood, when only her grandmother remembered her birthday and brought her those little cakes. Grandma was gone now, and with her, the only person in the world who had ever loved her. Now even the last memento she'd left behind, this house, would have to be sold to cover medical expenses. When she saw Rita and Dylan kissing passionately, when she slapped Dylan and was pushed down the stairs by Rita, when she lay alone in the hospital, unable to even drink water, while being lectured by her friends, Novia decided then that she would leave this place. She didn't want to be seen by the Humbert family as a daughter-in-law who married above her station, nor did she want to remain the self-sacrificing elder sister who gave endlessly without complaint. She wanted to be herself, to be Novia alone. Her phone chimed with 2 incoming messages. One was from Dylan. I spoke too harshly earlier. Don't take it to heart. We've got all the time in the world. One is the notification for the next treatment, scheduled in just half a month. Once it's done, she'll forget everything. Take the remaining money from selling her house and start anew in a picturesque small town. Novia only replied to the nurse before bending down to pick up the scattered ribbons from the floor. Dylan might have misunderstood. The moment Novia saw him kissing Rita, there was no future left for them. After tidying up the room, Novia called the prearranged agent to come over. After uploading the photos to the app, the agent hesitated to speak. "Ms. Novia, this property of yours is in a great location and well maintained. In recent years, property prices in this area have been rising steadily, and they're bound to increase even more if you're not in a hurry to sell. You could get a better price." Novia just smiled and shook her head, thanking them but saying it wasn't necessary. After the agent left, Novia sat on the sofa, gazing blankly around. Because she was selling the house, many things had already been packed and stored away at a cost, leaving the room empty and desolate now. The wrought tin chair where Grandma used to love lying beside, the desk she made with her own hands in the bedroom. Only the person who sat on the chair and the family photo on the desk were gone. She remembered when she was little, Mom was always exhausted, too tired to speak, only crying. She wanted so much to comfort Mom, but when she approached, Mom grabbed her and started hitting her instead. Mother cried while pinching her, scolding, "It's all your fault, and your heartless father's too. If it weren't for you, I'd have remarried long ago. All my suffering is because of you and your father. You're just as selfish, of course you are, carrying your father's blood in your veins." She didn't know what to do. Her body ached terribly, and she desperately wanted to push her mother away. When she raised her head, she saw her mother's tear-streaked face, felt her tears falling onto her own cheeks. Her pushing hands slowly lowered. Novia thought at that moment, if this could make Mother happy, then enduring the pain would be okay. After Mom calmed down, it was as if nothing had happened before. She would cook Novia's favorite spare ribs and patiently mend her torn clothes. She would tell Novia, "Study hard, Novia, so you won't end up like Mom, betrayed by the wrong person, a lifetime spent drowning in resentment." Novia had complex feelings toward her mother, her hatred incomplete, her love imperfect. Throughout her years of growing up, only her grandmother had been her sole beacon of light. Her grandmother would bring her osmanthus-flavored candies she loved, would gently apply medicine for her, would take her out to play, telling her she wasn't a burden or deadweight. Novia murmured, "Grandma, I'm leaving. I couldn't keep the house. Please don't blame me." Her phone suddenly began to vibrate. Novia opened it to see a message from Dylan. "You left your necklace at my place. When will you come get it?" Novia clicked open the photo. It was the Dylan had given her for their 10th anniversary, a custom chomette piece, its ruby centerpiece blazing with fire even in the photograph. When she received it, Novia had been dazzled by its brilliance, until Dylan's mother's words struck in the next instant. How calculating, knowing cash transfers could be reclaimed, so she had my son gift her jewelry instead. It's quite remarkable that an orphan like you could come up with such a trick. Dylan's expression changed, but he could only look helplessly at his mother and chide her softly. "Mom," Novia refused Dylan's request to wear it, instead treasuring it by keeping it safely locked away. She would occasionally take it out just to look at it. "There's no need to retrieve it now," she replied. "Leave it with you for now, we'll talk about it later." After sending the message, she fell into a deep sleep. When she woke up, Dylan was sitting by the bed, seeing Novia open her eyes. He asked hoarsely, "Awake, I came to check on you. And brought you the necklace while I was at it." Novia didn't get up, taking the necklace and casually placing it on the table. "Thanks for the trouble, but you really didn't have to deliver it so late." Dylan shook his head. "This necklace means something different." He held Novia's hand. "Whenever I see this necklace, I think of all the little moments we've shared together. We've been through so many storms together, yet now we're having this cold war over such a trivial matter." His voice caught in his throat as he spoke. "It's really not worth it." Novia also recalled the past. Dylan once nearly got into a car accident driving late at night to deliver medicine when she had a fever. When worshipping Buddha, a monk predicted she'd live a lonely life. Yet he insisted on making vows at the temple by prostrating himself at every step. With swollen forehead and bleeding knees, piously closing eyes, may Novia live a safe, complete, and happy life. Novia was diagnosed with uterine cancer and could no longer conceive. Dylan got a vasectomy to declare his stance to Dylan's mother. Those were such good times. Novia withdrew her hand, the blue bruises and needle marks on its back clearly visible, yet Dylan ignored these and said to her, "Rita had a tough time staying at the hotel and ended up in the hospital with food poisoning from takeout. How about I go with you to the hospital to bring her back?" Novia stated flatly. Where would we live after bringing her back? Dylan, I've told you before, I'm selling the house. Dylan frowned slightly. Why sell the house when everything's fine? Novia sighed. On Rita Hess' birthday, I told you, I'm moving. Dylan pursed his lips and fell silent. Both remained quiet. After a moment, Dylan stood up. Then get some rest. I'll go check on Rita at the hospital. When you're sick, you shouldn't be left alone. Novia waited a moment after hearing the door close. Then got up to delete Dylan's fingerprint from the door lock. She returned to bed and closed her eyes. A sleepless night. In the morning when Novia got up, dizziness struck and she bumped into the bedside table. The necklace fell to the ground. Fearing damage would make it difficult to return, she picked up the necklace and examined it carefully, only to discover an inscription on its inner side. Love, Rita. Novia pondered for a moment, then stood up and opened the safe. She found her own necklace lying safely inside, the only difference being that hers was engraved with Novia. The owner of this necklace goes without saying. Novia gazed at it for a long moment before suddenly laughing. Her laughter gradually turned into reddened eyes. So her anniversary with Dylan was also Dylan and Rita Hess' anniversary. She wiped away her tears, wrapped the two necklaces carefully, and headed to the hospital. Arriving at the ward door, Novia paused, took several deep breaths, then raised her hand to push it open. Dylan's voice came from inside. Only when I'm with Rita does my heart feel at ease, perhaps due to an unhappy childhood. Novia always seems burdened with worries. She's sensitive, suspicious, and independent. Over time, it's inevitable that stress builds up. Novia's hands trembled violently, while Dylan continued speaking. You're not like your sister, so cheerful and sunny. Before he could finish, Novia had already turned and run far away. On the way back, Novia couldn't stop replaying Dylan's words in her mind. Every detail she had confided in Dylan during her emotional breakdown now felt like sharp knives stabbing into her. Dylan had shed tears for the first time when he learned about her past from Novia Hess' lips. This man who was always so strong, he felt indignant for Novia, heartbroken for Novia. He vowed to give Novia happiness. Now he spoke with a tone of helplessness and mockery. Venting to his half-sister, Novia gasped for air, tears streaming uncontrollably down her face as if they would never stop. Her vision blurred, and breathing became increasingly difficult. The pain from her nails digging into her palms kept her slightly awake, allowing her to make it home. Only after taking her medication did she gradually regain her composure. Looking at the two necklaces in her bag, she decided to gather all the things Dylan had given her and have them stored away. When she left, she would courier them back to Dylan within the same city. The agent called her, saying there was a potential buyer, asked when would be convenient for them to come see the property. Novia scheduled a time with him. The prospective buyers were an engaged couple about to get married. The man's still fiery gaze at his fiancée revealed the burning love that remained in their hearts. This house looks so cozy, honey, let's take this one, okay? The man nodded and affectionately tapped the tip of her nose. All right, we'll go with your choice. Novia was also touched by such sweetness and couldn't help but smile slightly. This house was the safe harbor her grandmother left her. If it could help create happiness for a loving couple, Grandma would surely be happy watching from heaven. When signing the contract, Novia noticed how much the woman adored the wooden carving in the living room, so she simply gifted it to her. Considerate wishing them marital bliss, she remembered how Dylan's hands had been covered in scars when he gave her this wooden carving. Smiling with such contentment, he said that when he wasn't around, this little rabbit would keep Novia company in his stead. Now she no longer needed Dylan's companionship. If the buyer hadn't wanted it, she might have returned it to Dylan or simply thrown it away. After completing the formalities, she quickly received the payment for the house. Novia moved into a decent hotel. Apart from attending her treatments on time, she would go out for walks. The late autumn sunlight was still warm, and she often sat in a nearby park, basking in the sun. Dylan and Rita seemed to have faded from her life. During this time, she felt a peace she had never known before, until Dylan Hess' phone call shattered it. Come to the hospital now, immediately, right away. Dylan spoke in a stern tone, urging her impatiently. Truth be told, Novia didn't want to go. After several therapy sessions, her feelings toward Dylan and Rita had grown increasingly distant. She knew that Rita was her half-sister, the child of the mistress who had destroyed her family. She saw this sister kissing her almost fiancé. As she read these words, her heart could scarcely muster another ripple of emotion. She felt they no longer had anything to do with her, yet remembering she hadn't properly broken up with Dylan face to face, she still got up and went. As soon as I arrived at the hospital, I saw everyone gathered around the ward. Dylan, Sarah, and the others. Novia stood outside the door, unable to push her way in. Novia, how dare you show your face here? Who had stepped out to fetch hot water, came back in and saw Novia, instantly flying into a rage. The others also turned their heads at the sound. Their eyes filled with anger and disgust. Dylan fed Rita a sip of water before putting down the cup. He turned to look at Novia, the disappointment in his eyes so intense it seemed about to overflow. "Tell me, why would you do this to Rita?" He strode toward Novia, uncontrollably gripping Novia's shoulders and shaking her. "Rita has always struggled with depression, and yet you sent people to threaten her at the hotel? What kind of heart do you have?" Novia's shoulder ached sharply from Dylan's grip as she tried to make him let go, yet Dylan turned a deaf ear. The crowd watched Dylan treat her this way without lifting a finger. Among them were her best friend, to whom she had lent her entire savings, and subordinates for whom she had stayed up late revising plans to cover their mistakes. Yet without exception, they all glared at her with hatred, as if she were some heinous criminal. "It wasn't me at all. I haven't even seen her during this whole time. Moreover, Rita's depression is something I only learned about today." Sarah couldn't help but interject. "You claim you didn't know. If you were unaware, how could you have prevented the doctors from giving Rita medication as her guardian? Had Rita taken her medication regularly, she would never have been triggered." "You're still making excuses. Don't you realize Rita is almost dying?" Novia finally noticed Rita trembling behind Dylan. "Rita, what's wrong with you?" Rita startled at Novia's voice, then froze completely, lowering her head as if lost in thought. Novia approached, wanting to see what was wrong with her. Unexpectedly, Rita suddenly screamed, shouting, "Don't come any closer." Then she frantically grabbed objects around her and threw them at Novia. Novia had no time to dodge and was hit squarely. There was a deep gash on his forehead, blood streaming down. Dylan quickly stepped in front of Rita, shouting at Novia, "Get out, don't you dare come near her." Novia took a deep breath and pressed her hand against the wound. She needed to make things clear with Dylan. Stepping out of the ward, she heard their comforting voices through the door as they consoled Rita. Through the glass, she saw Dylan carefully applying medicine to Rita's hand. Everyone comforted her, saying the bad person had already left. Rita gradually relaxed and hugged Dylan tightly. Dylan gently held her, soothingly patting her back. Novia turned her head and called a nurse to ask for medicine and band-aids. The nurse was frightened when seeing her blood-covered face and immediately took her to get stitches. "Be sure to take care when you get back. Don't let it touch water." "What a shame, such a deep wound will leave a scar." Novia smiled reassuringly at the nurse, saying it was fine. While still being treated, Dylan found Novia. Seeing Novia with gauze taped to her forehead, her figure paused slightly. "Rita is mentally unstable. She didn't really mean it. Don't take it to heart." Novia shook her head. "It's fine. I wouldn't hold it against a patient. It's you who's worked hard. Taking care of patients is exhausting." Her expression remained calm, clearly showing she genuinely didn't mind. Dylan was startled. He had prepared himself for an argument with Novia. Now that she was magnanimously showing understanding, he suddenly found himself at a loss for words. "It's good that you understand. Does the wound still hurt? Is it serious?" Dylan wanted to step forward to check her injury. Novia instinctively retreated, avoiding his hand. His movement froze midair, then fell limply after a moment. Before he could speak, Novia said directly to Dylan, "What happened to Rita wasn't my doing." Dylan instinctively retorted, "The troublemakers who came knocking have already identified you. Then who else could it be? Or was Rita just scaring herself?" Novia choked up. "If that's how you see it, there's nothing I can do. I came here mainly because I need to talk to you about something. We should Brea." Before she could finish speaking, Sarah ran up nearby, panting heavily. "It's terrible. Rita woke up and didn't see you. She's having a complete mental breakdown." Dylan didn't hesitate for a second. Without uttering a word, he turned and ran toward Rita's hospital room. Novia watched his retreating figure, silently bidding farewell in her heart. 9 days later would be her final treatment, the moment she'd forget everything, forgotten completely, never to be remembered again. She turned and walked away, bidding farewell to a decade of emotions, along with the painful and tumultuous first half of her life. But before she could leave the hospital, someone grabbed her from behind. Before she could struggle, a sharp pain struck the back of her head, and she lost consciousness. When she woke, the hospital's harsh white light blinded her. Novia, her head throbbed violently as she struggled to rise, only to find her entire body immobilized. Looking down, she found her body tightly bound by restraints. She had seen these during treatments. They were used on patients to prevent them from harming themselves or others in moments of agitation. But why was she restrained here? Just then, the door opened. Dylan slowly appeared before her. He didn't speak, just gazed at her with a complicated expression. "Dylan, let me go." Dylan shook his head. "Novia, Rita's mind has suffered severe trauma. The doctors say the chances of recovery are slim." Novia retorted, "So what? I told you, Rita Hess' affairs have nothing to do with me. I didn't need to do those things to her. Dylan's last trace of guilt vanished from his eyes. You're still obstinate and unrepentant. In that case, I won't hold back either. You should experience firsthand how difficult depression treatment is. Consider it compensation for Rita. Dylan finished speaking and signed the consent form handed to him by the doctor. Thank you for your trouble, doctor. Please begin the treatment. He didn't look at Novia again. Novia watched as the doctor prepared the electroshock device, her eyes wide with horror, shouting Dylan's name. Dylan didn't turn around or hesitate. Opening the door and leaving, Novia watched as the doctor approached her with a grin, holding an electric shock device. Ms. Novia, right? Someone specifically asked me to take care of you. Don't worry. I guarantee you won't have so much as a scratch when you leave this place. She watched as he slowly brought the device closer to her temples. Then came a sudden surge of electricity. Ah! She couldn't help but scream. So this was how painful electric shocks felt during MECT treatment. She hadn't felt it because of the anesthesia. It hurts. It hurts. It hurts. She wanted to struggle, but couldn't move a muscle. She wanted to open her mouth to question, to curse, but found she hadn't an ounce of strength left. Who did she want to curse, to question? Was it the unfaithful Dylan, or the selfish Rita, or perhaps curse the mother who brought her pain yet raised her? Or the father who abandoned them both to elope with his mistress? Novia spent the first half of her life consumed by resentment and suffering. Now she was tired. She no longer wanted to dwell on these thoughts. The next surge of electricity came as expected, sending her into uncontrollable convulsions. When this round of shocks finally ceased, she collapsed weakly back onto the surface. Tears streamed from the corners of her eyes. She comforted herself, thinking she just needed to endure a little longer. She would soon leave this place. 7 days later, she was released. Novia looked dazed, showing no reaction even when Dylan appeared. Dylan called her name softly and draped a coat over her shoulders. Novia, I'll take you home. Novia looked numb, then threw the coat to the ground and shook off Dylan's hand. She opened her mouth, her voice hoarse. Go, Dylan, I don't want to see you anymore. Dylan stared at the coat on the ground, overwhelmed with indescribable emotions. I knew you'd be angry with me, but you have to believe I truly have your best interests at heart. Everything comes at a price. I can't let you keep bullying your sister. Novia, I'll make it up to you properly. Novia didn't speak anymore. There was no use saying anything anyway. She didn't want to see Dylan anymore and was just wondering how to stop him from following her when Dylan's phone rang. His gaze swept over the caller's name, halting his motion to hang up as he answered instead. Rita Hess' voice came through. Dylan, where did you go? I woke up and couldn't find you. It scared me. Are you going to abandon me too, just like mom, dad, and sister? Dylan replied gently. How could that be? I just have something urgent to attend to. I've got an unavoidable social engagement outside, but I'll come back to keep you company right away. Novia distinctly heard Rita sobbing through the receiver. Dylan, I'm so scared. Really? Dylan didn't hesitate, saying, I'll be right back. Before hanging up, Novia felt his gaze lingering on her and his hesitation to speak. She said faintly, You can go back. I can take a taxi myself. Dylan looked at Novia's indifferent expression, wanting to say something, but then thought of the devastated Rita. In the end, he chose to rush back to the hospital first. Novia took a taxi to the treatment center for her final MECT session. As she closed her eyes, the nurse said gently, Ms. Novia, relax. This is the final treatment. I hope this is the last time I see you here, and I wish your life will be forever spring from now on. Novia didn't speak. In the last second before the anesthesia took effect, a tear fell from the corner of her eye. Through the haze, someone was calling her name. Novia opened her eyes to see a nurse. Ms. Novia, you're awake. How are you feeling? Novia stared blankly for a moment before slowly remembering. She had undergone MECT treatment and was now in the hospital. The nurse gently helped her up, handing her the follow-up medication and her notebook. Ms. Novia, you can take a moment to rest here. It's completely normal to feel slightly disoriented right after treatment. Novia was guided by the nurse to sit in the rest area, feeling somewhat bored. Her mind felt so empty, as if something was missing. She tried to recall, but no matter how hard she thought, nothing came to mind. Novia lost her energy and resignedly picked up the notebook to read. For some reason, when she saw this notebook, she instinctively felt repelled by it, but curiosity compelled her to keep reading. The notebook contained many entries, beyond recording some of her key information. One name appeared frequently, Dylan. They met, grew close, and eventually became a couple. Then came the struggle of bearing familial pressures before finally getting engaged. The last page disappeared. leaving only a single line. Breaking up with Dylan was a relief for both of us. I can finally leave this place and be Novia, my true self. The handwriting carried a sense of liberation, though she didn't know the exact reason for their breakup. Novia thought that after dating for so many years, if they chose to separate, this Dylan must have done something to hurt her, or perhaps things had reached an irreparable point. Novia tried hard to shake off the strange feeling in her heart, thanked the nurse, and left the hospital. Back at the hotel, she checked her savings on her phone. They were substantial. She recalled what was written in the notebook: to leave this place and live somewhere else. Novia didn't hesitate much. She chose her grandmother's hometown, Utah. It was a place with beautiful scenery and simple, honest folk. She still remembered sitting in her grandmother's lap as a child, listening to stories about life in Utah. There were rolling mountains and pine forests stretching endlessly. In winter, the continuous snowfall adorned the world in pure white. She wanted to visit her grandmother's hometown. Novia bought plane tickets and booked a hotel. After checking out, I left with just my simple luggage. She dragged her suitcase behind her, walking without a care in the world. Just as she left the hotel, a haggard-looking Dylan rushed into the hotel. He dashed to the front desk and asked urgently, "Hello. Does a lady named Novia live here?" The front desk checked the system and replied, "Yes." Dylan's face lit up with joy, only for the receptionist's next words to send him straight to hell. "Miss Novia just checked out and has already left?" Dylan hurriedly asked. "How long has she been gone? Which door did she leave through?" The receptionist pointed him in a direction. He chased outside, only to see a vast sea of people. No trace of Novia could be seen anymore these days. Rita's illness has been recurring, leaving him utterly exhausted. He hasn't been able to free himself to visit Novia. He knows Novia resents him. He also knows it's hard for Novia to forgive him. He thought it was just a matter of time. After all, Novia loved him so much, she wouldn't leave him. A decade of shared feelings gave Dylan this confidence. But when Rita's condition stabilized, he arrived at Novia's doorstep, hesitating before turning the knob. But he found the fingerprint lock wouldn't open anymore. He was momentarily stunned, but still knocked and said, "Novia, it's me. I know you're still angry. Just give me a chance, okay?" The next second, the door opened. Dylan felt a surge of joy. "Who do you think you are?" A strange girl poked her head out, eyeing Dylan with wary suspicion. Dylan was taken aback, stepping back to double-check the house number. It was correct. Suppressing the rising panic within, he asked the person before him, "Hello, where did the person who used to live here go?" The girl still didn't let her guard down. "Oh, you mean the previous homeowner, right? She left after selling the house to us. No idea where she went. Said she wanted to move to another city." Dylan's ominous premonition had come true. "Did she say where she was going?" The girl shook her head, looking at the anxious-faced man before her with a hint of disdain in her heart. When chatting with the previous homeowner, that young woman, she had noticed her looking melancholy. Later, while cleaning the house, I found a group photo featuring the man before me posing with a mess. Novia. Anyone with eyes could tell they must have broken up. Miss Novia must have been hurt. Such a scumbag, all decent looks, but only knows how to hurt women. She curled her lips disdainfully, watching Dylan walk away dejectedly before slamming the door shut with a bang. Dylan walked silently, his mind replaying fragments of time spent with Novia over and over. Pathetically few memories there were. He remembered how she'd seemed to hesitate, holding back words during their final meeting. What did she want to say to herself back then? Was it about leaving? Or, Dylan at this thought, an intensely sharp pain radiated from the deepest part of his heart. Was she going to tell him then that she wanted to break up? It must be. Dylan tormented himself by repeatedly reminding himself that Novia no longer wanted him. She had truly left him, resolutely selling the house. She left no trace behind. Why? Why wouldn't they even give him a chance to explain? Just a little bit more, and he could have found Novia. Dylan stumbled back home in a daze. He was greeted by the bouncing Rita. "Dylan, you're finally back. You have no idea how long I've been waiting for you. Where have you been?" Dylan looked at the vivacious girl before him, feeling no emotional stir for the first time. Once, he thought Novia was too independent and strong-willed, and too reticent. Rita's cheerful sunshine is the only thing that can relieve his daily fatigue. Now, Rita raises a smile before him, yet he feels no joy whatsoever. In his heart and mind, all he thinks of is Novia. "When to see your sister?" Rita's eyes flickered slightly at the mention of his sister. She asked tentatively, "What did sister say? Has she forgiven me?" Her eyes reddened as she spoke. "I'm afraid elder sister still minds what happened between us before." "Did elder sister blame you? I've caused you so much trouble during this time." With elder sister's temper, she definitely wouldn't let it go so easily. "Should I go apologize to elder sister?" Dylan waved his hand loosely, his voice filled with exhaustion. "No need. Dylan's attitude made Rita feel uneasy, and she nervously clenched the hem of her skirt. "What's wrong, Dylan? Am I causing you trouble?" Dylan took a deep breath, feeling as if even the strength to respond had completely drained away. "Novia is gone?" Rita could hardly believe it. Suppressing her wild joy, she asked, "Gone? Where did she go?" Dylan's eyes reddened at her question, with tears glistening momentarily. "She left this place without leaving me a single word." "Novia, she..." His voice choked as he spoke. "She doesn't want me anymore." The suppressed emotions finally burst through at this moment. He abandoned all pretense of composure, tears streaming down his face as he broke into loud sobs. The cries carried both regret and sorrow, and even more despair. A person might be found with effort, but Novia's love was lost to him forever. He had always thought Novia was like plain water to him, tasteless and dull. Only when he truly lost her did he realize she had already become an inseparable part of his life, woven into its very fabric. Rita watched the agonized man before her, unable to contain her joy. Her hands trembled slightly with excitement. Novia was finally gone. That eyesore of a woman who'd overshadowed her at every turn while hiding behind the title of a sister had completely vanished from her and Dylan's world. From now on, Dylan would have eyes only for her. She would become his rightful lover, even his wife. However, Rita's joy didn't last long. Just as she had anticipated, Novia's departure took away all Dylan's vitality, but contrary to Rita's expectations, instead of transferring his affections to her, he rapidly sank into despair. Dylan began drinking heavily. He no longer went to the office on time, and even when he did, he often reeked of alcohol. After work, he would either linger at bars or buy stacks of alcohol to bring back to his apartment, drinking himself into a stupor. The once confident, composed, and dignified CEO Dylan was gone, replaced by a disheveled man with a scruffy beard, hollow eyes, and an air of utter desolation. Rita had long since moved into Dylan's apartment under the pretense of needing someone to take care of her. Every day, she dressed meticulously, prepared meals, trying to awaken Dylan with tenderness and care, but Dylan simply couldn't see it when he came home. He often couldn't even be bothered to change his shoes, ignoring everything Rita had carefully prepared and the sweet smile on her face, heading straight to the bedroom and collapsing heavily onto the bed. Then, under the influence of alcohol, he would drift into a half-awake state, murmuring repeatedly the name of the one he had already lost. "Novia, Novia, I'm sorry. Come back, please come back." Every time she heard this name, Rita's smile stiffened slightly more, and the hatred in her heart grew another inch. After all she'd done, even going so far as to feign worsening depression to gain sympathy, what had it gotten her? Novia was gone, yet like a ghost, she still clung stubbornly to Dylan's heart. She couldn't even get close to a drunken man. Every time she tried to approach, hoping to create some established fact, Dylan would either be completely unconscious or push her away in his stupor, mumbling, "Don't touch me," or worse, "You're not her." Frustration and jealousy gnawed at Rita's heart like venomous snakes. That night, Dylan was brought home dead drunk by his friends again. Rita struggled to help him onto the bed, watching as he collapsed unconscious, still murmuring "Novia." Deliriously, Rita stood by the bedside, her chest heaving violently, her gaze dark and venomous as she stared at Dylan. Had she sacrificed so much, even pushed Novia down the stairs with her own hands, just to end up with the soulless shell of a man whose heart would always belong to another? No, she would never accept this. A mad idea took shape in her mind. She turned and walked out of the bedroom, heading to the liquor cabinet in the living room where she poured herself a glass of water. Then, from a hidden compartment in her handbag, she carefully retrieved a small paper packet containing some white powder. This was something she'd obtained through certain friends, supposedly capable of making people lose their senses. She hadn't originally planned to resort to such methods, but Dylan's attitude left her with no other choice. Once the rice is cooked, with Dylan's sense of responsibility and her tactics, she wasn't afraid he wouldn't take responsibility. Rita poured the powder into the water, gently shaking it as she watched the substance dissolve quickly, leaving no color or taste. She took a deep breath and carried the water glass back to the bedroom. "Dylan, have some water. It'll make you feel better," she said softly, helping the drowsy Dylan sit up. Dylan, in his dazed state, indeed felt parched and drained the cup of water from Rita's hand. Rita watched him drink, a flash of triumph and nervousness flickering in her eyes. She set down the water glass, patiently waiting for the medication to take effect. As time ticked by, Dylan's breathing seemed to grow heavier, his brow slightly furrowed. Rita knew the moment had come. Her hand trembled as she reached to undo Dylan's shirt buttons, her heart pounding wildly in her chest. This time, she must have him. As long as she gets through tonight, Dylan will be hers forever. Yet, the moment her fingertips touched his skin, Dylan suddenly opened his eyes wide. His gaze was initially unfocused, clouded by the dual haze of alcohol and drugs, but soon sharpened as he recognized who stood before him. It wasn't the face he'd been longing for day and night. A surge of intense disgust and resistance welled up inside him. Get away. He pushed Rita away with all his strength. Rita, caught off guard, staggered back and fell onto the carpet. She stared in shock at Dylan, who struggled to his feet. Though his eyes were clouded, they held unmistakable, undisguised rejection and coldness. Dylan, Rita tried to step forward. Don't touch me, Dylan growled, his voice hoarse yet resolute. You're not her. You'll never be. With that, he didn't spare Rita another glance, staggering into the ensuite bathroom and slamming the door shut with a loud bang. Then came the violent sound of retching from inside. Rita collapsed onto the floor, listening to the sounds coming from the bathroom. Staring at that tightly shut door, feeling the icy chill radiating from the floorboards, the color drained from her face bit by bit, leaving only a deathly pallor. Failed, even with the medication. What his subconscious resisted was still her. An overwhelming sense of humiliation and utter defeat flooded over her like a tidal wave, followed by towering waves of hatred. She hated Dylan's heartlessness, and hated Novia even more. It was all Novia's fault, even after leaving. Her ghost still lingered. She wouldn't give up. Rita clenched her fists, her nails digging deep into her palms. Dylan was hers, could only be hers. No matter what it took, she would have him. Novia's everything, she would steal it all. Yet, staring at that tightly shut bathroom door, Rita realized clearly for the first time that stepping into Dylan's heart might be harder than reaching the heavens. That old shadow named Novia had long been deeply rooted in Dylan's soul. Perhaps never to be uprooted. The sound of retching in the bathroom lasted for a long time before finally falling silent. Dylan had likely collapsed from exhaustion and fallen asleep inside. Rita slowly rose from the cold floor, smoothing her disheveled dress. The tear stains on her face had dried, leaving only a nearly numb chill. She stared at the tightly shut door, her eyes no longer holding any expectation, only a desperate resolve to burn all bridges. Since warmth and companionship couldn't melt him, since not even medication could bring him to heal, then the only way left was the most extreme method, to sever his lingering attachment to Novia once and for all. A venomous scheme rapidly took shape in her mind. A few days later, Dylan was hospitalized due to severe gastric bleeding. His body had completely collapsed from relentless alcoholism and emotional breakdowns. During his hospital convalescence, when his spirits were at their most fragile, Rita felt the time had come. She carefully chose an evening when a drizzling rain outside added to the melancholy. Dressed entirely in black, her eyes swollen and red. Clutching a brown paper document folder tightly in her hand, she entered Dylan's hospital room. Dylan lay on the hospital bed, his face pale, his eyes hollow as they stared at the ceiling, and 4 drip attached to the back of his hand. In just a short time, he had become gaunt and haggard. Almost unrecognizable. Dylan, Rita's voice trembled with tears as she spoke. Dylan didn't even bat an eyelid, as if he hadn't heard. Rita walked to the bedside. Tears rolling down like broken strings of pearls, she held the document folder before Dylan's eyes, her voice heartbroken. Dylan, I received a package, from from Big Sister. At the word sister, Dylan's pupils finally shifted, his gaze slowly focusing on that document folder. What? His voice came out dry and hoarse. It's sister's belongings. Rita sobbed uncontrollably, as if mustering every ounce of strength just to utter these words. Dylan jolted violently. His pupils contracting sharply, he snatched the document folder with such force that the needle in the back of his hand nearly tore out, blood instantly seeping out. Yet he remained completely oblivious, his hands trembling. He opened the document folder to find just 2 thin sheets of paper inside. The first one was of a medical certificate of death, presumed name, Novia, cause of death, severe traumatic brain injury and multiple organ ruptures due to a fall from height, date of death. Just a few days before he was hospitalized for gastric bleeding, Dylan's breath hitched instantly, his blood seeming to freeze in that very moment. He stared fixedly at that piece of paper, each character burning into his retinas like a red-hot branding iron, searing straight through to his heart. No. Impossible. Novia, how could? His hands trembled as he picked up the second sheet of paper. It was a letter, in Novia's handwriting. Dylan knew everything about her too well. He recognized it immediately as Novia's writing, though the strokes carried a frail weakness between them. Dylan, by the time you read this letter, I should no longer be in this world. Don't feel sad for me, perhaps this is my liberation. After living over 20 years, I'm exhausted, love or hate, I've let it all go. Yet, what my heart still clings to most are you and Rita. Dylan, I'm sorry, it's my flawed personality. My stubborn pride and silence that put too much pressure on you. As for your affair with Rita, I don't blame you anymore. She's young, vibrant, like a little sun, truly more suitable for you than I ever was. I'm leaving now. My only wish is that you'll take good care of Rita. She is my only sister in this world, and my only family left. Our parents failed her, and I haven't been a good sister either. She's been insecure since childhood, and now she's fallen ill. I truly can't rest easy, Dylan. For the sake of our 10-year friendship, please take good care of her for me. Will you consider this as fulfilling my final wish? Don't look for me. Let me leave quietly, wishing you happiness. Novia's last words. The letter slipped from Dylan's trembling hands. Floating lightly onto the pristine white sheets, he seemed to have had all his bones removed, his entire body limp on the hospital bed. Staring blankly at the ceiling as silent tears surged forth, instantly soaking the pillow, he made no sound, yet the immense, silent grief filled the entire ward, suffocatingly oppressive. Ah! After what felt like an eternity, a soul-wrenching, beast-like wail finally tore from his throat. He curled up his body like a wounded trapped beast, letting out desperate and agonized whimpers. Novia, Novia, why? He kept repeating incoherently. Completely drowned in remorse and pain like a tidal wave, he hated his past foolishness, hated the harm he had caused her, hated that he hadn't even seen her one last time, hadn't even known she had endured such immense suffering, until her dying breath. She believed he had fallen in love with Rita. Until her dying breath, she was still considering him and Rita. Until her dying breath, she remained so utterly alone. Rita watched from the side as Dylan collapsed in grief. A fleeting sense of satisfaction flashing through her heart, yet her face was painted with sorrow and concern. She threw herself by the bedside, weeping as she clung to Dylan's trembling shoulders. Dylan, don't be like this, sister. She's already gone. She wanted us to be well. She asked me to stay by your side, Dylan. Dylan shoved her away violently, his eyes bloodshot and crimson. Get out, just get out. Rita was pushed to the ground, her weeping growing even more heart-wrenching. Dylan, your sister asked me to take care of you. It was her dying wish. You can't keep destroying yourself like this. It would break your sister's heart to see you this way from heaven. Dying wish, Dylan muttered to himself. As if those two words had struck his very core, he looked at the suicide note again, reading the words, take care of her for me, my only sister, and a final wish, Novia's last wish. It was as if all his strength had been drained in an instant, every struggle and resistance crumbling away at that moment. He stopped crying out, lying there quietly instead. His eyes were hollow like two black holes, as though his soul had departed along with that suicide note. From that day on, Dylan stopped drinking. He complied with treatment, ate on time, and tried hard to get better, but he had also completely changed. He became even more reticent, his eyes devoid of their former sparkle. As if he were merely going through the motions with a hollow shell of himself, he began to take care of Rita, fulfilling all her material demands and allowing her to stay by his side, but the way he looked at Rita had lost all warmth, replaced only by a heavy, cross-bearing numbness. The sole purpose of his existence now seemed to be fulfilling Novia's dying wish, and Rita, finally achieving her heart's desire, firmly bound herself to Dylan's side under the identities of her late sister's entrusted charge and the little sister in need of care. She reveled in Dylan's lavish lifestyle, gradually presenting herself to the world as his fiancée. Yet late at night, watching the slumbering Dylan beside her, observing his perpetually furrowed brow even in sleep, hearing him unconsciously whisper that name, she knew she possessed only an empty shell. All that man's love, all his pain, all his soul had been buried alongside that forged suicide note, interred forever with the woman he believed dead, Novia, and she, Rita, with her venomous lies, had forged an icy prison that entrapped both Dylan and herself. This is victory. She had schemed so hard to win was filled with an air of despair and futility. That accident occurred after a business cocktail party. Dylan had inevitably drunk a few too many glasses during project-related socializing. His alcohol tolerance wasn't what it used to be, compounded by his depressed mood, and he soon fell into deep drunkenness. Rita coincidentally came to pick him up. The next morning, Dylan woke up with a splitting headache. The sunlight was blinding. He instinctively raised his hand to shield his eyes, only to touch warm, smooth skin. His eyes flew open as his heart plunged into an icy abyss. Beside him, Rita lay curled naked in his arms, fast asleep. The sheets were disheveled, And the air was thick with an ambiguous atmosphere. He himself was also completely naked, just as Dylan's mind went blank, unable to comprehend how this had happened. The bedroom door was gently pushed open. "Rita, we came to see you." The door wasn't locked, so we let ourselves in. "We brought you." Sarah's cheerful voice suddenly cut off. She and her friends behind her stood dumbfounded, staring at the scene on the bed, the gifts in their hands falling to the floor with a thud. Rita was startled awake. Seeing the people at the door, she let out a short scream, quickly pulling the blanket over herself. Her face flushed crimson as she shyly hid behind Dylan, though her eyes held a trace of barely concealed smugness. Dylan stood frozen in place, his entire body turning cold. He watched as Sarah and the others' expressions shifted from shock to something complicated, before finally settling into understanding and even a hint of blessing, leaving all his explanations stuck in his throat. Caught red-handed with irrefutable evidence, Rita timely burst into sobs, her shoulders trembling slightly, appearing utterly helpless and pitiful. Sarah sighed and stepped forward, her tone carrying both reproach and resignation. "Dylan, look at you. Since things have come to this, Rita is a girl after all. You can't let her down." "Yes, Dylan. Rita has waited for you so long, and your sister entrusted her to you before leaving. You two were meant to be together." The clamoring voices surged like shackles, binding Dylan tightly. He looked at the seemingly fragile and helpless Rita hiding behind him, recalling Novia's final wish in that suicide note, "Take care of her for me." A tremendous, nauseating sense of doom gripped his throat. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and when he opened them again, only lifeless resignation remained in their depths. "I'll take responsibility," he heard his own voice rasp out, devoid of any emotion. Rita had finally gotten her wish. She insisted on having a grand and dreamy wedding, wanting to announce to everyone that she, Rita, was Dylan's rightful wife. Dylan didn't object. As if completing a task, he fulfilled all her demands. The wedding was extravagantly luxurious. Her gown was the most expensive custom-made design. Guests filled the venue, and media outlets competed for coverage. The church bells chimed melodiously on the wedding day. Rita wore a pristine white wedding dress, her smile radiant as she walked down the petal-strewn aisle arm in arm with Dylan. In the pews, Sarah and their group of friends clapped enthusiastically, their faces beaming with joyful blessings. "It hasn't been easy. Rita has finally waited for this day." "Yes, Dylan should move on too." Novia would be comforted seeing this from heaven. "They make a good pair. Rita is so lively, just what Dylan needs to cheer up." Dylan stood before the priest, hearing those familiar blessings while his hollow gaze fixed on some distant point in the air. His thoughts wandered far away. There was a time when he had fantasized countless times about marrying Novia. He imagined how she would look in a wedding dress, ethereal and captivating, like a lily bathed in moonlight. He imagined her placing her hand in his palm with a hint of shyness, feeling its warmth. He imagined them exchanging rings, vowing to spend their lives together. Yet now, standing beside him in a dreamy wedding dress was Rita. Below the stage, offering their blessings were friends who had once blessed him and Novia. Fate plays cruel tricks. What supreme irony. "Dylan, do you take Rita to be your wife, to love and cherish her, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, till death do you part?" The pastor's voice snapped him back to reality. Dylan remained silent for several seconds, acutely aware of Rita's nervous gaze beside him and the expectant stares from everyone below. He opened his mouth, but the word "I do" weighed like 1,000 pounds. Finally, he heard a completely emotionless voice force its way from his throat. "I do." These 3 words felt like the final judgment on all his past loves and hopes. The boisterous wedding festivities had finally ended. Dylan dragged his exhausted body back to their new home, a luxurious villa chosen by Rita that he never liked. Rita was still excitedly chatting in the living room with her girlfriends like Sarah, reliving wedding details and showing off the massive diamond on her finger. Dylan had no intention of joining in and headed straight upstairs to his study, but at the turn of the staircase, he overheard deliberately hushed yet unmistakably triumphant words drifting from the living room. It was Rita's voice, laced with tipsy abandon and utter relaxation. "Sarah, today was absolutely wonderful. I finally beat Novia once. Everything she possessed is now mine." Sarah chuckled in agreement. "Indeed, you always have a way, but it was really close back then. If you hadn't been quick-witted, pretending to have depression and getting hold of that." The rest of the words Dylan could no longer make out. Pretending to have depression, getting hold of that. Like a thunderbolt exploding in his mind, Dylan felt his blood run cold instantly, freezing in place with icy hands and feet. He held his breath and silently moved closer. Then he heard Rita let out a scornful laugh. her voice dripping with disdain and venom. "Humph. How dare Novia compete with me? Our parents' love belongs to me, and Dylan should be mine too. That death certificate and suicide note cost me a fortune to make them look so convincing. You should have seen Dylan's absolutely devastated face. Ha! He actually believed I could get depression, but honestly, Sarah, it's thanks to you backing me up at the hospital. Making everyone believe Novia drove me to depression. Sarah, oh, don't mention it. Just don't forget me when you become Mrs. Humbert. Congratulations on getting what you wanted, Mrs. Humbert." "That's right, I am now Mrs. Humbert. That bitch Novia, she's probably still clinging to life in some corner, right? Or maybe she's really dead. Anyway, she can't interfere with me anymore." Whatever else they said afterward, Dylan could no longer hear. He stood in the shadows, as if pierced by 10,000 arrows, while the entire world spun and crumbled before his eyes. Fake. It was all a lie. Depression is fake. The death certificate is fake. The suicide note is fake. That night's accident was probably a carefully designed trap by her, and he, like a complete fool, played like a puppet by this woman. For a fabricated dying wish, he betrayed the woman he loved most, living in endless pain and self-blame, even marrying this venomous woman. The thought that Novia might still be alive, possibly suffering alone somewhere while he was here, holding a grand wedding with the very person who harmed her. Pfft, a metallic taste surged in his throat. Dylan suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, staggered, and barely managed to steady himself against the wall. Hatred, overwhelming hatred burned away his last shreds of reason like hellfire in an instant. His vision flooded crimson as he slowly raised his head, gazing at the smiling bride in her wedding dress in the living room with icy, merciless eyes, as if staring at a corpse. The joyous atmosphere of the wedding still lingered, but in the corner of this luxurious villa's staircase, a true storm had already begun brewing. The honeymoon after marriage Dylan had arranged with meticulous care. They went to the Maldives, staying in top-tier private over-water villas, enjoying the azure seas and skies. Dylan was almost endlessly accommodating to Rita. Gentle and considerate, attending to every detail with meticulous care, he would apply sunscreen for her, cut her steak during candlelit dinners, and carry her along the beach when she cooed about being tired. Rita was utterly immersed in this happiness, gazing at Dylan's handsome profile. She basked in his tenderness, her heart swelling with smug satisfaction. See, all that talk of 10-year relationships and unforgettable love, men are pragmatic creatures at heart. Novia was ancient history now. The one by his side was her, Rita. She was young, beautiful, and knew how to play coy. Bit by bit, she was claiming the space in Dylan's heart. Sooner or later, he'd be entirely hers. "Mom, do you see this?" she whispered inwardly, with a twisted sense of triumph. "That woman couldn't win against you back then, and now, your daughter has beaten hers. We'll always have the last laugh." She even began to think that Dylan's lingering attachment to Novia was only because Novia had died at just the right moment, becoming the eternal white moonlight in his heart. If Novia were still alive, there'd be no competing with her. The honeymoon came to a perfect end amidst Rita's triumphant satisfaction. On her first day back home, Rita, in high spirits, invited Sarah and others for a shopping spree. Swiping Dylan's supplementary card, she bought countless new season items. Returning to the villa laden with bags only by evening, the maid took the shopping bags from her hands, looking somewhat uneasy, and whispered, "The master has returned and is waiting for you in the living room." Rita didn't mind at all, even feeling somewhat boastful. Wondering if Dylan couldn't wait to see her, humming a tune, she walked briskly into the living room. "Dylan, I'm back. Look what I bought." Her voice abruptly stopped when she saw the scene in the living room. Dylan wasn't waiting for her on the couch as usual. Instead, he stood with his back to her before the floor-to-ceiling windows. The blood-red glow of sunset filtered through the glass, outlining his tall frame with a cold golden rim. The atmosphere in the living room was suffocatingly oppressive. Rita felt her smug satisfaction evaporate instantly as an ominous premonition coiled around her heart like an icy serpent. "Dylan," she tentatively called out again, her voice unconsciously trembling slightly. Dylan slowly turned around. His face was expressionless, but his eyes were like poisoned ice blades, piercing straight at Rita, filled with a fury and loathing she had never seen before, so intense it seemed almost tangible. Rita felt her legs weaken under his gaze and instinctively took half a step back. Dylan said nothing, simply striding to the coffee table, picking up a thick manila folder from its surface, and then, with sudden force, slamming it violently onto the table right in front of Rita. The loud bang made Rita jump in fright. The folder's clasp burst open from the impact, scattering countless photos and documents across the entire glass surface of the coffee table. "Explain," Dylan's voice was low and hoarse, carrying a barely restrained fury on the verge of spiraling out of control, just one word, yet heavy as 1,000 weights. Rita lowered her head uncertainly, her gaze falling on the scattered papers and photographs. With just one glance, her face instantly turned deathly pale, drained of all color, her lips beginning to tremble uncontrollably/span. The photos showed her clandestinely meeting with the professional who had helped forge her death certificate in secluded corners. There were covert photos of her having secret conversations with Sarah on various occasions, even surveillance screenshots of her secretly pouring white powder into Dylan's water cup, and those documents were her bank transaction records transferring money to the forger. It was her who anonymously contacted internet trolls online to spread chat records and IP tracking evidence showing Novia forced her into depression and portrayed her as antisocial and mistreating her sister. There were multiple transaction records of appreciation fees received by Sarah's account from her. And one more thing, it was a photocopy of Novia's library card application from a small-town library in Utah. The date was after her death certificate was issued. She never died at all. The evidence is irrefutable. All her meticulously planned schemes, all her lies she believed to be flawless, were completely exposed. Rita felt the world spinning around her, all strength drained from her body. She staggered, nearly collapsing to the ground. She looked up and met Dylan's icy, cruel gaze, eyes that seemed ready to skin her alive. No, Dylan, please let me explain. These are all fake. Someone is trying to frame me. Her words tumbled incoherently as she made a final desperate struggle, tears instantly welling up. This time they were truly tears of terror. Fake. Dylan let out a derisive laugh, the sound brimming with boundless mockery and desolation. He advanced step by step toward Rita, his overwhelming presence nearly suffocating her. Rita, do you think it's satisfying to play me for a fool and make me dance to your tune, using a forged suicide note to make me live in pain and guilt, forcing me to marry you, you poisonous woman? You drove away the person I loved most and made me believe she was dead, and now you dare tell me it was all fake? His voice suddenly rose sharply, the last word almost roared out, carrying apocalyptic fury. Rita was so frightened that she collapsed onto the cold floor, trembling uncontrollably. Unable to utter a single coherent sentence, she knew it was over. Everything she had painstakingly built had completely crumbled at this moment. Why? Dylan's voice was low like the growl of a trapped beast, each word seemingly forced through clenched teeth, dripping with bloody anguish. Why did you deceive me like this, Rita? If it weren't for you, Novia wouldn't have left. I would never have lost her. His eyes were bloodshot, his chest heaving violently. The pent-up remorse, rage, and humiliation of being deceived threatened to breach the dam of his reason. Rita collapsed to the ground. After the initial shock faded, seeing Dylan so utterly gutted by the truth, a spiteful recklessness surged through her instead. She knew begging was futile, and so was pretending. She jerked her head up, tear-streaked face twisting into something sharp and unhinged. You think, she shrieked, voice cracking with venom, blame me. Dylan, how dare you put all the blame on me? Wasn't all of this enabled by your indulgence? It was you who didn't push me away when I first deliberately approached and hinted at you. It was you who chose to believe me when I fell down the stairs to frame her. It was you. Time and again, you abandoned her when she needed you most. All for me. It was you, clearly wavering in your heart yet refusing to admit it, shifting all the blame onto her cold demeanor, subjecting her to emotional neglect. You reveled in my youth, my admiration, my passion, basking in the sense of being needed that you found with me, and now you dare play the devoted lover, pinning all the blame on me alone? Dylan, your hypocrisy makes me sick. Rita's words were like venom-dipped daggers, piercing straight into Dylan's deepest, darkest corners, the ones he least wanted to acknowledge. His tall frame suddenly swayed, his face turning deathly pale. Why, yes. He couldn't refute it. It was he who tacitly allowed Rita's transgression, he who craved that fleeting warmth and ease, he who repeatedly chose between Novia and Rita, opting each time for the sister who seemed more in need of protection, more adept at playing vulnerable. It was he who used the so-called dying wish to bind himself, yet dared not examine that tiny, secret sense of relief at being freed from Novia's oppressive past. This realization filled him with more despair and self-loathing than any accusation could. He was the most damnable accomplice of all. Shut up, Dylan roared, trying to silence this soul-crushing indictment. Seeing she had struck a nerve, Rita only intensified her attack, with twisted delight on her face. She continued to torture him with her words. Do you know what's most pathetic about Novia? She probably believed until her death. No, she probably still believes that you chose me, that you fell in love with me. She's just like her useless mother, only capable of silently enduring, never even fighting back. deserving to be abandoned, deserving to have nothing. She's just a pitiful worm, and you, Dylan, are too, you both. Enough, Dylan suddenly erupted with a roar. His voice brimming with unbearable agony and fury. He couldn't bear to listen any longer. Each word felt like death, by 1,000 cuts. His gaze remained locked on the vicious-looking woman on the ground. This woman had destroyed everything between him and Novia, and now she was trampling over Novia's, and his last shred of dignity with her venomous words. Rage and a nearly destructive impulse overwhelmed him. Shut her up, make her pay, make her taste Novia's suffering too. A cold and cruel thought took shape in his mind. He took a deep breath, forcibly suppressing the emotions that threatened to tear him apart. His eyes regained an eerie calm, but beneath that calm lay turbulent darkness capable of devouring everything. He took out his phone and dialed a number, his voice devoid of any warmth. Come in, take her away, deliver it to Mr. Black. He deliberately emphasized the words Mr. Black. Rita was momentarily stunned upon hearing the title Mr. Black. Then suddenly remembered that doctor, the one skilled in his special treatments, whom Dylan had once instructed to take care of Novia, that place where Novia had been subjected to electric shock torture. Boundless terror instantly seized her. No, Dylan, you can't do this to me, I'm your wife. She screamed in horror, scrambling backward on hands and knees, desperate to escape, but it was already too late. Two expressionless bodyguards in black suits swiftly entered, flanking the limp Rita on either side before ruthlessly dragging her out. Dylan, you bastard. I hope you die horribly. Let me go. Help. Dylan, I was wrong. I truly know I was wrong. Please spare me. Rita Hess cries. Please. And curses mingled together, fading into the distance until they finally disappeared beyond the villa's doorway. Dylan stood alone in the vast, icy living room as the last glimmer of sunset vanished, darkness gradually enveloping everything. He slowly crouched down and picked up the photocopy of Novia at the library from the floor, his fingertips lightly brushing over that blurred yet familiar name. Novia, he murmured in a broken voice. I'm sorry. I was stupid. He thought making Rita experience the same pain would atone for his sins and quell the hatred in his heart. Yet deep down, he knew better than anyone. Some wounds, once inflicted, can never be healed. Some mistakes can never be undone. He lost her. It was his own hands that pushed her away. Utah's sky was a clear, lofty blue unlike anything Novia had ever seen before. The air carried the crisp scent of pine needles and the fragrance of earth, utterly different from the exhaust fumes and concrete odors of big cities. She rented an old house with a small yard on the edge of town, where an ancient birch tree stood in the courtyard. Every morning, she was awakened by birdsong, and opening her window revealed distant mountains like strokes of ink painting. She learned from the townsfolk, going to the market to buy fresh vegetables and cooking for herself. Occasionally, she would follow the neighborly aunties to pickle sour cabbage or stitch thick cotton quilts. She still flipped through the handwriting in her notebook from time to time, but the memories of Dylan and Rita felt like reading a stranger's story, barely stirring any ripples in her heart. MECT therapy was like a gentle eraser, blurring those sharp pains and leaving only faint traces behind. She truly cherished this newfound peace, no longer needing to sacrifice for anyone, no longer fearing abandonment, no longer living in comparison and resentment. The heart feels as if washed clean by Utah's crisp mountain waters, becoming expansive and serene. A clear voice often whispers in her heart, Novia, these are already the best days. The town was small, its pace of life unhurried. Novia's savings, though substantial, wouldn't last forever. She began considering finding work, both to integrate into the community and to secure some income. She walked slowly along the blue stone-paved path and came across a guest house named Northern Lights. The guest house was well situated, facing an open meadow with a view of snow-capped mountains in the distance, yet it seemed deserted, its signboard somewhat weathered. Novia pushed the door open and stepped inside. Behind the front desk, a man wearing a thick knit sweater was frowning at his computer screen, his fingers absently tapping the desktop. He appeared to be in his late 20s, with deep-set eyes and brows, bearing the rugged features characteristic of northern men, but his face was now etched with the melancholy of a poor business. Hearing the wind chime, he looked up and saw Novia, pausing momentarily. Outsiders were rare in this small town, especially a young woman with such an aloof demeanor and striking beauty. Hello, need a room? He stood up, his tone still polite. Novia shook her head and smiled. Hello, I noticed there isn't a job posting outside. Are you hiring by any chance? The man, who was the homestay owner Ivan, sized her up with some surprise. What can you do? I used to work in project management and operations in the city, Novia said calmly. I see your homestay has excellent location and facilities, but perhaps there's room for optimization in terms of promotion and guest experience. Ivan raised an eyebrow. His homestay had been struggling for 2 years, and he genuinely knew little about operations and marketing. With nothing to lose mentality, he let Novia try her methods for a few days. Novia quickly got the hang of things. She redesigned the homestay's online page, took exquisite photos that highlighted the stunning snow-capped mountains and meadow views outside the windows. She compiled those hidden attractions and hiking routes known only to locals, ones you couldn't find in any travel guide, and created beautifully hand-drawn maps to gift guests. She even utilized the courtyard space to organize evening bonfire parties and stargazing events. She spoke little, but worked with meticulous care and organization, exuding a reassuring presence. Ivan watched as the dim gray booking page of the guest house gradually began to speckle with spots of red. When he looked at Novia again, his eyes held newfound admiration and gratitude. The turning point came in late autumn. That year, Utah experienced its most active aurora phenomenon in decades. Brilliant green-purple ribbons of light danced across the night sky, dreamlike and ethereal. Novia seized this opportunity with sharp intuition. She immediately worked overtime to create promotional copy and videos themed "Chasing the Northern Lights," contacting previously partnered travel bloggers to position Northern Lights Lodge as the ultimate aurora viewing destination. Come to Northern Lights Lodge, watch the aurora from your bed. This slogan brimmed with irresistible allure. Suddenly, the once quiet town was flooded with tourists chasing the Northern Lights. The well-prepared Northern Lights guest house was nearly fully booked every day, with reservations stretching 2 months ahead. Ivan was run off his feet. Novia was even busier managing everything from front desk reception to event planning, occasionally even stepping into the kitchen to cook when they were short-staffed. Though busy, her face glowed with healthy color and her eyes sparkled, the fulfillment of someone who'd found her true worth. The peak tourist season had passed, and after crunching the numbers, this quarter's profits exceeded the total income since the guesthouse first opened. That evening, Ivan called Novia into the courtyard. The birch trees had shed all their leaves, their bare branches appearing vigorous and powerful under the moonlight. He handed Novia a thick envelope. "Novia, this is your bonus for the quarter." Ivan's voice carried hearty laughter. "To be honest, without you, this guesthouse probably wouldn't have made it through winter." "Thank you." Novia took the envelope. It had considerable weight. She raised her head, gazing at the sparse yet bright stars in the night sky. Feeling the substantial reward in her palm earned through her own efforts, as a genuine, relaxed smile curved her lips. "I should thank you too, Ivan, for giving me this job." Here, she wasn't anyone's fiancée, nor anyone's sister. She was simply Novia, with her own hands and mind. She truly gained a foothold in this small town far from the hustle and bustle, finding her own peace in small achievements. The wind blew through the yard, bringing a chill. Yet it made her feel incredibly clear-headed and free. The days ahead seemed like the night sky over Utah, though cold and clear, filled with tranquility and hope. The frenzy brought by the aurora season hadn't fully subsided when another wave of excitement quietly emerged. A photographer who had come specifically to capture the aurora accidentally pointed his lens at Novia and Ivan while shooting a bonfire party at the guest house. In the photo, under the flickering flames, Novia was slightly tilting her head as she listened to Ivan speak, her lips curved in a faint yet genuine smile, her gaze serene and gentle. While Ivan looked at her, his rugged features unconsciously softened with focus and tenderness. Behind them stretched the deep blue night sky and the warm glow of the guest house lights, the composition and atmosphere perfectly balanced. The photographer titled this photo "Northern Warmth" and submitted it to a well-known domestic travel photography magazine. Unexpectedly, it won an award and quickly went viral online. "Such divine homestay owners, what kind of magical ambience is this? Please share the address." Decision made. Next vacation will be here to soak up some celestial vibes. Netizens were deeply moved by the tranquility and warmth conveyed in the photos, making the Northern Lights homestay and Novia Ivan unexpectedly become the newest internet sensations. The small town, still buzzing from the aurora's fame, once again saw a surge of tourists flocking in. Many didn't even come for the Northern Lights, they were drawn by that photograph, eager to experience this northern warm glow firsthand. Facing the sudden influx of visitors and attention, Novia and Ivan had to collaborate even more closely. Together, they discussed how to improve services, handle media interviews, and meet the needs of more tourists while preserving their guest house's unique charm through their daily interactions. Novia could clearly sense Ivan's increasingly undisguised feelings for her. He would remember her sensitive stomach, silently warming a glass of milk for her every morning. When she stayed up late organizing documents, he would quietly place a desk lamp and freshly cut fruit by her side. And when tourists teased them by saying, "The boss and madam make such a perfect pair," his ears would turn slightly red, yet he wouldn't deny it, only stealing a glance at her. Novia, Ivan, when he handed her milk, she would softly say, "Thank you." When he worried she might be too tired, she'd reassure him she was fine. Occasionally, she'd even voluntarily share with him some amusing anecdotes about Utah that she'd heard as a child from her grandmother's stories. Ivan noticed her changes, the light in his eyes growing brighter. His actions filled with renewed energy. The sudden surge in visitor numbers also caught the attention of local authorities. The town mayor personally led a delegation to inspect the site, praising the Northern Lights homestay for its model of boosting the town's tourism economy. Novia seized this opportunity, drawing on her accumulated project management and planning skills from her time in big cities, combined with her deep understanding of local resources during this period. Submitted a comprehensive planning proposal for creating the Northern Lights a cultural tourism route to the town government. The proposal not only outlined Aurora observation sites centered around the Northern Lights homestay, but also connected resources such as birch forest hiking trails, traditional Awanki hunting experiences, winter snow parks, and specialty mountain product markets around the town, aiming to create an in-depth tourism route integrating natural sightseeing, cultural experiences, and leisure vacations. Her proposal was clear in concept, detailed in data, and highly feasible, earning high recognition from the town government. Soon, the town government decided to collaborate with the Northern Lights homestay to jointly promote the development of this cultural tourism route. Ivan was responsible for coordinating local resources and implementation. Novia mainly handled overall planning, publicity, and external liaison. The two complemented each other perfectly, making this cultural tourism route thrive remarkably. Through their efforts, this once somewhat desolate and nearly forgotten border town has blossomed with unprecedented vitality and energy. The streets have become clean and tidy, now lined with many distinctive cafes, handicraft shops, and family-run inns. Local young people have found new hope. No longer solely focused on leaving for migrant work, but choosing to stay and participate in their hometown's tourism industry. Winter's ice and snow have shed their symbolism of bitter cold, transforming into treasures that attract visitors. The summer grasslands and forests also welcome enthusiasts seeking to escape the heat and enjoy hiking. The town's popularity continues to grow, yet its original tranquility and simplicity haven't entirely faded. They've simply blended into a thriving warmth. Standing in the courtyard of the guest house, watching the distant town illuminated by more and more lights against the snowy mountains, listening to the mingled laughter of tourists and locals carried by the wind, Novia leaned against Ivan. Feeling her heart brimming with a deep sense of accomplishment and serene happiness, Ivan gently held her hand and whispered, "Novia, thank you for coming here." Novia clasped his warm, dry hand in return, lifting her head with a smile as her eyes reflected the brilliant starlight and distant city lights. This place was no longer just a refuge to escape her past, but a new world and life she had helped build, one that truly belonged to her. And the quiet yet dependable man by her side was the warmest, steadiest presence in this newfound world. Novia and Ivan's relationship was like spring in Utah, where ice melts. Life renews, and everything unfolds with natural warmth. There were no earth-shattering confessions, just an evening when the sun was setting in the west. Ivan naturally took her hand as they returned from inspecting their newly opened hiking trail. Novia paused slightly, then relaxed and squeezed his hand in return. The warmth passed between their fingers replaced all words. From then on, their days seemed soaked in honey. They ran a guest house together, planned travel routes, and welcomed guests from all corners of the world. In her free time, Ivan would take her deep into the grasslands on his motorcycle to see the wildflowers in full bloom, or silently hand her a cup of her favorite osmanthus tea while she was busy working at her desk. Novia smiled more and more, her whole being radiating a soft glow from the deep-seated relaxation and happiness. She had almost forgotten that fog-shrouded past, the notebook tucked away at the bottom of a box, gathering dust. Utah, Northern Lights, Ivan, these made up her entire, real, and happy present. Until that afternoon, the autumn rain had just passed, leaving the sky as clear as if washed by water. Novia was chatting with several long-term guests under the pavilion in the courtyard, introducing the upcoming Aurora season activities. Ivan was checking accounts indoors. The wind chimes tinkled crisply as the wooden door of the guest house swung open. A figure walked in against the light, tall and straight-backed, clad in an expensive trench coat that seemed out of place in the small town, exuding an air of lingering exhaustion and melancholy. Novia instinctively looked up, her face still carrying traces of a fading smile, her gaze colliding with the newcomer's eyes. Time seemed to freeze in that moment, those eyes deep, complex, swirled with disbelief, the wild joy of something lost and found again, and fathomless pain and regret. Who is he? Novia felt doubts stirring in her heart. Meanwhile, Dylan gazed at Novia with near greed. taking in her rosy cheeks, the unfamiliar calm and warmth in her eyes, and the vibrant vitality surrounding her that he had never bestowed upon her. His heart felt as if clenched by an invisible fist, the pain so intense it nearly stole his breath. She was truly alive, and what's more, she was thriving, good, as if without him, she would truly be free. Novia, his voice was hoarse, trembling imperceptibly as he stepped closer to her. The laughter and chatter beneath the pavilion came to an abrupt halt. The guests watched curiously at this suddenly appeared, imposing stranger. Novia's smile gradually faded from her face. She looked at Dylan, her eyes momentarily blank, as if struggling to recognize a blurred shadow from the past. The after effects of MECT therapy had created a strange sense of detachment toward a face that should have been etched deeply in her memory. There was no anticipated stabbing pain in her chest, only a vague discomfort of being disturbed. Ivan heard the commotion and came out of the house. His eyes immediately landed on Dylan and Novia's slightly furrowed brows. A man's intuition made him step forward immediately, positioning himself naturally beside Novia with an air of subtle protectiveness. "Sir, are you checking in?" Ivan's steady voice shattered the eerie silence. Dylan's gaze finally shifted from Novia's face to rest upon Ivan. The two men's eyes met midair, an unspoken contest permeating the space between them. Dylan saw the natural fit of Ivan standing beside Novia, saw the undisguised concern and possessiveness in his eyes when looking at Novia. A sharp pang of jealousy and panic instantly pierced his heart. He ignored Ivan's question, locking his gaze back on Novia with an almost obsessive urgency. "Novia, I've been searching for you so long. Come back with me." Novia looked at him with clear eyes, yet maintaining a distinct distance. She shook her head lightly, her tone so calm it bordered on cruelty. "Sir, you must have mistaken me for someone else. I don't know you." After a pause, she added, "And besides, this is my home. I'm not going anywhere." The word "sir" pierced through Dylan's heart like 3 icy needles. She didn't recognize him. She said this was her home. An overwhelming tide of despair and panic engulfed him, after enduring hellish torment during his desperate search. Finally finding her only to be met with such a casually uttered, "I don't know you." Ivan reached out and gently wrapped his arm around Novia's shoulder, delivering an eviction notice to Dylan. "Sir, if you're not here to stay at the inn, please don't disturb my guests and my fiancé." Dylan's figure suddenly swayed violently, his face instantly turning as pale as paper. He stared fixedly at Novia, trying to detect any trace of pretense on her face, but only saw her leaning slightly toward Ivan, a gesture of complete trust and reliance. He had come, only to find himself already out of the game, and what's more, he had been utterly, thoroughly forgotten. Utah's crisp autumn air now felt like knives, slicing through his breath and shattering the hard-won peace of this frontier town. Well, this was the final outcome. Dylan did not leave the town. He found a small inn near the northern lights, and settled in. Like a stubborn trapped beast refusing to accept reality, he couldn't believe that Novia would forget him, forget the 10 years they had shared. He began trying every possible way to approve of their past. He took out his phone, scrolling through those treasured photos of them together, showing them to Novia one by one, their travels, birthday celebrations, embracing before the temple where Dylan had made his wish. In the photos, Novia smiled gently, nestled by his side. Novia watched, her eyes filled only with unfamiliarity and a faint trace of confusion, as if she were observing someone else's story. Those images failed to stir even the slightest ripple in her mind. Her heart remained utterly calm. "Novia, look, this was the necklace I gave you for our 10th anniversary. Though you never wore it, you treasured it dearly." Dylan's voice was urgent, laced with humble pleading. Novia merely shook her head, polite yet distant. "Mr. Dylan, I'm sorry, but I truly don't remember." He even tracked down the monk who had once predicted Novia would live a lonely life, recording a video to prove he had kowtowed at every step for Novia, praying for her safety and happiness. Yet when Novia saw the younger Dylan in the video, devout as he was, she merely sighed softly. "Mr. Dylan, let bygones be bygones. What you're doing now only disrupts my life." Her calmness was the greatest cruelty to him. All his efforts, all his heartfelt confessions, all his painful reminiscences were like punches thrown at cotton, soundless, leaving only himself looking like a pitiful creature lost in the past and clinging desperately. Ivan remained by Novia's side. He didn't stop Dylan, but stood guard with a silent yet resolute presence. He would bring Novia warm tea, and when she showed signs of weariness, he would gently remind her it was time to rest. His very existence was the strongest refutation to Dylan. "Look, without you, she's doing better." Watching the wordless rapport between them, and seeing Novia completely at ease by Ivan's side, Dylan's heart grew colder by the inch. What he brought was not salvation, but trouble. Finally, on a night with sparse stars, Novia took the initiative to find Dylan, haggard and sitting on the stone steps outside the hotel. "Mr. Dylan, let's talk." Her voice was calm in the chilly night breeze. Dylan looked up, his eyes bloodshot with a final glimmer of hope. They sat together on the cold stone bench in the small courtyard of the inn. Novia didn't beat around the bush and spoke directly. "Mr. Dylan, I underwent MECT treatment to forget some unbearably painful memories. Although the notebook recorded some fragments, to me they feel like someone else's story from a past life. I can't feel the love you mentioned, nor the hatred you spoke of." She paused, gazing at the warm lights of the distant homestay, her tone becoming gentle yet firm. "I'm very happy now. Ivan treats me well, and life here gives me peace and contentment. That's all I've ever wanted. So please, let go." She turned her head, looking at him with clear eyes. "Don't try to awaken anything anymore. Even if I remember, all that pain will come back with it. Is that what you want for me?" Dylan was thunderstruck. Did he want her to remember? Remember his betrayal? Remember Rita Hess' schemes? Remember those lonely days in the hospital? Remember that damned electroshock therapy he personally consented to? No, how could he be so selfish? He saw that her eyes now held light at last, and her face bore a genuine smile from the heart. How could he push her back into hell with his own hands? An overwhelming sorrow and realization swept over him. He was wrong from the very beginning. He thought finding her would make amends, would allow them to start anew. Yet he didn't realize that for her, true liberation lay in complete forgetting. His head drooped, shoulders slumped, all his persistence and strength draining away in that moment. After a long silence, he let out an exceedingly soft, utterly exhausted sigh, his voice hoarse beyond measure. "All right, I let go." At dawn the next day, Dylan left Utah alone. He didn't go to see Novia again, only casting one last distant glance at the Northern Lights guest house before departing. In the morning light, he saw Novia and Ivan standing side by side in the courtyard, seemingly discussing something. Ivan tilted his head listening to her, casually tucking a windblown strand of her hair behind her ear. The scene was warm and beautiful. Dylan cast one last glance at Novia's serene profile, then turned and melted into the sparse morning crowd of the small town, never looking back. The ripples he brought were like a stone cast into a lake. Eventually, they would fade away. Utah's sky remained vast and distant. Snow would blanket the mountains once more, and the auroras would arrive punctually in the next season. Meanwhile, Novia and Ivan's story continues in this northern town. No earth-shattering events, just companionship that flows gently like a long stream, and happiness built together, filled with the warmth of everyday life. Those old shadows will eventually be completely covered by new sunlight. The end.